Good evening, everyone, and Merry Christmas. This is Jim Ransom, aka as Morning Jim, broadcasting on Christmas Eve for the express purpose of reading a visit from St. Nicholas. And without more ado, here it is. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When, out on the lawn, there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below. When, what to my wondering eyes should appear, but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." You know, that's the first poetry I ever heard read by my father, bless him. He had my brother on one knee and I on another, and he had an illustrated book of The Night Before Christmas. And he sat in front of the fire and read it to us. And while he was doing that, he was taking photographs with his old camera that he had on a tripod, and he operated the shutter with a long cord and a little clicker between his fingers, because he was a pretty good amateur photographer, and he printed his own photos. So he could do things with them, and it was a marvel to watch him work in his darkroom. But be that as it may be, Clement Clark Moore, who is the author of this poem, we think, was an American poet who published his first book of poetry in 1844 when he was 61 years old. And it included this poem, but he had apparently published this poem along with others, mostly anonymously, for many years. In fact, A Visit from St. Nicholas had been published at least 13 years before, but nobody knew the name of the author. Why did it take him so long to claim the poem under his own name? It's a long story, and here's a short version. There was a tradition in England of poets, especially if they belonged to the gentry or upper classes. They didn't always claim their verses or publish them post-mortem. But why? It seems that at the time, writing poetry was deemed a somewhat outrageous thing for polite society to engage in. And this was true even in Shakespeare's time. As great a genius as he was, a lot of people thought that his plays and poetry were written by one of the noble lords who was too embarrassed by his interest in poetry to actually claim the poems. But nobody has really accepted that. Moore himself was from a family of New York gentry, and it wasn't until his poem was well known that he was willing to claim it. In fact, he was 65 years old before he published a book under his own name. Yeah. Most people accept that he did write "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," but there has been some argumentation about that. One of my poetry friends has assured me vehemently that the literary style of The Night Before Christmas and the Santa Claus poem that was very much different from this that I read last week were really by the same person, and I believe that's probably correct. A side note to all this is that a contemporary of Clement Clark Moore, Emily Dickinson, who's accepted now as being one of America's finest poets, never published her poetry during her lifetime. She was very shy, and I think she felt that her rather overbearing father would not approve. Her poems were published after her death, I think by her brother. I could be wrong about that, so I stand corrected if I am. Okay, I hope you have laughed more at this poem than you have at my get-up that I've worn today. Nobody would ever mistake me for Santa Claus, I'm sure. But I want you all to have a happy Christmas and a happy New Year. This program will not return until January 8th, 2022, that is. I hope I can remember my dates in 2022. It usually takes me a month or two to get it right. Meanwhile, we will all have time to make our New Year resolutions. I hope you are working on yours. I'll get after mine once this is over. So, goodbye, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and stay well.